A controversial ruling from a United Kingdom court, which would have forced a woman with disabilities to have an abortion against her will, has been overturned. But it's prompted a conversation on the state of healthcare in the UK and threats to human life. The English Court of Appeal last week overturned a previous ruling of the Court of Protection, which authorized doctors to commit an abortion on a woman with developmental disabilities who objected against it. The woman, who is under the care of a National Health Service Trust, has not been identified, but is reportedly at least 5 months pregnant. Doctors claimed pregnancy and childbirth would damage the woman's mental health, but both the woman and her mother objected to the abortion, citing their Catholic faith. A social worker who helps care for the woman also objected to the abortion. Steven Woolfe is the independent member of European Parliament for North West England. He is traveling and joins us now from Brussels, Belgium. Welcome back to the show.
Good evening, Catherine.
First off, praise God this decision was overturned, but what was your reaction when you first heard about this case?
Well, my first reaction was one of disgust and absolute stunned shock that our country, my country that I've grown up in, that has a foundation of a Judeo-Christian belief has turned into a state that effectively is creating eugenics through our courts. And why do I be so dominant in that language is that here we have the use of abortion laws to force an abortion on a 22-year-old, or a mid-20s as we understand it, but we believe she's around 22-year-old woman who has a low mental capacity, who was 5 months pregnant, to have abortion against her will, the will of her mother, who was a midwife, willing and able to accept looking after that child, and against her social worker and her family, who were willing to embrace the new birth. And the question we had to ask ourselves is why? Why would a judge decide upon this, particularly when the law in our country says you cannot have abortion unless you have a threat to the life of the mother, or there is potentially a threat to the life of the baby. And in no circumstances did the courts hear evidence that say the mother would die or the baby would die or be severely ill. In fact, the baby was likely to be of perfect health.
And can you clarify, is this woman still at risk of being forced to undergo an abortion at any point, or is this latest decision final?
Well, we believe it's final because it's gone to the Supreme Court, which has overruled, thankfully, thank God, that we saw a sensible judgment. But it doesn't mean that in the future, cases like this could not happen again.
And Steven, what does this case reveal to how people with disabilities are viewed in Europe?
I think certainly in the United Kingdom, it has a deeply, deeply worrying sensation to me about how our courts are looking at those who are disabled or with disabilities. We have a view now that in this case, psychiatrists and obstetricians and a court can make fundamental decisions over the lives of those who are disabled or mentally incapable. And don't forget, what we're hearing here about this woman is that she has a mental age of about 12 to 14. That doesn't mean she's completely thick or stupid or idiotic. It just means she's growing less quickly than the rest of us. And that is deeply, deeply worrying. And we should all be raising concerns of why in Britain, the place where we have the birth of democracy, of a parliamentary democracy, is having courts that are regularly now looking at killing children and now seeking to have abortions of disabled or mentally incapable individuals. There's something deeply wrong in the psychology of our courts and our state.
This was almost the case of a government-mandated abortion. Steven, how can we protect women like the woman at the center of this case who are under the care of the state and object to abortion? What do you suggest?
Well, we have to fight back, and thankfully on this occasion, we did have strength of the public. There was over 100,000 people signed a petition. The pro-life organizations were able to raise funding to fight back and provide lawyers to help the family. we did this time, unlike the situation under Charlie Gard and Alfie Evans, we had the support of some strong UK bishops. But what we really need to do is recognise very firmly that the principles of Catholics and Christians in the United Kingdom in respect of the family, in respect of abortion, are being attacked regularly. And we need to be able to fund organisations much more strongly. We need to be able to get our supporters and individuals to raise their voices. We need to have politicians like myself who are not willing to kowtow and be cowed by the political correctness that attacks us. I mean, under Charlie Gard, for example, and Alfie Evans, I was called a far-right extremist for wanting to defend the life of a child. But that's how they do it.
You mentioned the cases of Charlie Gard and Alfie Evans, babies with undiagnosed conditions who were refused care against their parents' wishes, and I know you did work to try to intervene on behalf of Alfie Evans' parents. Between those cases and this latest one, what should our global viewers know about the state of healthcare, specifically in the UK, and threats to the sanctity of human life?
In the UK, they must recognise that this is, for many on the left and those who really seek the idea of termination at will, it is the kind of breeding ground of all the ideas, and the test cases are being used here. And so we have a really difficult fight on our hands, because if they win here, they will try and spread the ideology to the Commonwealth countries of Canada and Australia and New Zealand. And we're seeing that in the United States, where it initially began in the UK, where we said we should have full-term abortions. And I now see in the United States cases in certain states where you have politicians arguing that even you can have an abortion when the baby has been born. I mean, for me, that is not acceptable, and nor should it be.
That is powerful insight. And finally, how has your Catholic faith informed your response to this latest UK case?
Well, my Catholic faith has lent me the ability to think deep within myself and act strongly on the principles of trying to maintain life, not only for the mother, but also for the child, and also not to give up. I mean, we have to look at the fact that Jesus Christ suffered huge amounts of pain and suffering on the road to being placed upon that cross. He was challenged enormously on that route, but he never gave up. He never lost faith.
Steven Woolfe, independent member of European Parliament for North West England, thank you again for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine.